So there is a tide in the affairs of men or women, which taken at the flood, this is where you are now, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is found in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves or lose our measure. Doesn't that explain being a graduate student at a Big Ten university? Some of you have given up jobs to reach out into the world of doctoral student preparation, and with the hope that a job will be coming, maybe with as much salary as you were making at your high school job. One is hoping. And so just to get our discussion going and some ideas, I put down some suggestions for building a career which might be different than what you've heard, maybe. But there are things that I believe in, and almost all of them cannot be spoken about easily. But I'll just bring them to discussion. I think the most important one is the first one, and the other most important one is the last one. But music making from the inside out. And I think this is particularly appropriate at the graduate student level, when we get really involved with all of the tools that we find necessary for our jobs. So I have wonderful musicology colleagues, music theory people that wrote your textbooks. I mean, it's that kind of thing. So I believe in those tools. I believe in the bibliography course you're taking or whatever. I believe in all that. But those are just tools. They're tools to get us somewhere. And so the somewhere is that which we have to remember is most important. So when we say music making from the inside out, our outside efforts are tools. Score study, score marking. I use 5 multicolor pens. I don't use any. I memorize the scores. All of those are tools. I have a book of how to set up an ensemble. I've traded my ensemble setup 8 times until I get the perfect. It's like, how many people are trumpet players in here? How many of you have found the perfect mouthpiece yet? I won't even go into reeds. Well, for conductors, a lot of times it's just how we set our group up or whatever. All of those things are outside things. But for I think most of us, when you watch the people who are successful, it's the inside that counts. They have the outside thing, but if we neglect the inside, so the inside efforts emerge from true understanding of the music, not the markings. By attending a Big Ten university, you've already taken a great step into that. Nothing against the smaller institutions, but so many of the Big Ten universities offer musical experiences which are so difficult to find in the hinterlands, but which come into your campus at all the time. If I had attended at any university every faculty recital, I would not have had time to do my job. But I wouldn't have spent any money. And almost invariably, they were giving the same concert in New York City, $100 a ticket or whatever. So I felt that it was really important to continue with the listening, with the in-depth, becoming a musician. You are surrounded by opportunities at your campus. Outside of the band world, perhaps in the orchestra world, perhaps in the opera world, perhaps in the leader world, perhaps in the art museum, perhaps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Boy, take advantage of that when you can. And let that become part of your music making. Because our composers are not writing in a vacuum. Let's choose someone who is not with us anymore. Everyone knows the music of Alfred Reed at one time or another. Alfred Reed, I am convinced, saw himself as the next step in the lexicon of composers: Beethoven, Brahms, Mahler, Alfred Reed. I'm convinced of that. But if you had that in mind, you conducted Alfred Reed's music differently if you just looked at the score. So that's just food for thought. Next one. Rehearsal, conducting, both a science and an art. And I think this is so vital. We need to work continually in improving and developing and enhancing our communication skills with gesture, with the voice, etc. Rehearsal, psychology, clarity, all of that. But the most important thing is a vision of music making and making sure that we remain a role model of musical integrity, so that we are standing in the place of the composer and bringing the music to life. And it doesn't have anything to do with my sound. It has to do with the composer's sound. It doesn't have anything to do with playing at a competition or a high school festival and getting straight ones, where it's bringing the music to life in that way. I think that most of us, how many people in here are planning, I think the doctoral students are planning for some kind of collegiate career. Quite a few. And so most of us understand that the essence, a lot of times, of tenure and promotion at the collegiate level is working with high school kids and being able to still do that and to do that well. And so that's really vital and is important in all that we do. And so here we go. We go out, and theoretically, if we cross the state line, it's even better. Or if we go to Canada, or so now we're an internationally known person. But we have to know what to do. So we're introduced by the host, and the host says, here is so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so from whatever, and that gives you, that great introduction gives you about 12 seconds until the high school students expect to know, what do you really know what you're doing? You can live on that for 12 seconds. And then beyond that, it's show me what you can do and how you can do it. So that rehearsal, that ability to rehearse, that ability to connect right away, that ability to know how the music goes and what you want, that's really key for that. So, percolation. Next, understand politics and human relations. High school teaching, middle school teaching, collegiate teaching, whatever. I think this statement is potentially true. We work with very intelligent colleagues, many of whom are not always easy to understand due to fear, jealousy, ambition, or any number of other personality issues. Have you found that to be the case on occasion? Yeah. So we can't go in surprised at that. What we can do is we can go in with the expectation of dealing with that. We have to be aware that there are politics involved in every situation. So whether it's working with the athletic director, the dean, the chair of brass, whatever, part of our ability to succeed is how well do we communicate in an open and honest way with respect on both sides. And the only time we get into real trouble is when we close off. And we are unable then to continue that communication. Next, realize the power of language. Can you speak academic yet? Do you know all the words? The jargon, sometimes referred to as edubabble. And when we're in a discussion with very learned people, we can speak on that level. Do you know how to speak band director? And go down and get to the band hall and work with the group and build them up? I think we need to remember how to speak both of those words. because we live in an intellectual world of high standards. And for instance, being at the Jacob School for all of that time, I would be on committees with this person who sang at the Met and blah, 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 and this person is a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra, blah, 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 and this person who was working on continuing the history of Western music, we know as the Donald J. Brown. He's dead. It's continued to be written by that guy over there. So I had to be able to speak to those people in their languages. I didn't expect them to understand my language. And so that is really vital. Then, of course, we go out and work with various groups and people. And I have seen people actually fail because they tried to use the language of academia for the all-county honor band. And it just didn't work. So we have to be able to be true to ourselves, but be able to know both of those languages. Embrace the idea that outside gigs are not mostly about promotion or tenure or fame or money. And I think it shows up very, very quickly if we go into a gig because we have to, rather than seeing it as the opportunity of our lives. I don't know about you, but I was a member of the South Carolina All-State Band and the All-State Orchestra. That changed my life. And so whenever I go out and do an All-State Band or do an All-State Orchestra, that's the first thing I remember. This changed my life. What can I do to change their lives? How can I make this positive? And one of the most fun things for me was when I got asked about 4 years ago to do the South Carolina All-State Band in the same location at Furman University where I had been in 1970. And it was like a cathartic kind of experience. It's just wonderful. But whether it's the all-county honor band, is there such a thing? Do those words go together, all-county and honor? Well, yeah, because it's an honor for us to be able to work with those students. I remember one of the first ones I did was in Greene County, Indiana. They brought all 4 high schools together. Put up my baton and it looked like the wheat fields of Kansas with all the flutes that were in that group. They had 2 tubas. They had a row of saxophones. Now, a row of alto saxophones. Started here from the left, went all the way to the right. I thought, oh my, here we go. It turned out it was okay. It was okay. I never used the word more alto, please. I never did that, but it was still fun. Work ethic is very important, but this is the trick for it. Work on making content excellent, not veneer. Sometimes we think, if we put this presentation together and we use the right font, it's great to use the right font, but it's more important to have content that is important and vital. And the same with our music making. I know that there are some people who work on gesture beautifully, and it's a wonderful font. But is the music making filled with integrity? That's what really separates people out. And then finally, be grateful for the opportunity that we have to work in the best profession, combining music making and working to serving young people. And I think that's the other most important one. So that when you're coming back from budget meetings or you just found out that you have to do something you didn't expect or whatever, that we do remember that. I am very fortunate in that I count 2 mentors. I count lots of mentors. We all have lots of mentors, but I have 2 that I count as being most important. One, I was able to work with for 21 years as a colleague after I had been his student at Indiana University. That's Ray Kramer, and just a wonderful role model. And then my other mentor was Bob Reynolds, H. Robert Reynolds, who I used to get in the car and drive from my high school teaching position 2 hours to get to Ann Arbor just to watch Professor Reynolds conduct. I could have gone in and put earplugs in and enjoyed watching him conduct. The groups are really good too, so I didn't do that. But I would do that for inspiration. And then I had the chance to be in his group and to work with him for graduate work. And that's really important for me. That's where I come from in so many ways. And so one of the things that you notice is that those two gentlemen are still active. Yeah, very much so. It's an inspiration to me in a continuing basis. The first time I got to do the Indiana State Band, I had just been hired at IU, and for some reason Craig Kirchhoff had been unable to do the Indiana All-State Band. There are two. There's the Indiana All-State Band and then the Honor Band. But the All-State Band is still very, very good. And he couldn't do it, and so someone called up Mark Kelly, who had done it the year before, and he said, I'm not going to do it again, but you should contact Steve Pratt. And he said, oh, okay. So my first Indiana All-State Band was there. And I was really excited about doing that, and then I found out that the person doing the honor band was H. Robert Reynolds. Okay, right? And then, of course, Ray Kramer said, hey, what time's the concert? We're going to drive up. So here I am doing the Indiana All-State Band, knowing that Bob Reynolds is in the audience with the honor band ready to play next, and Ray Kramer's there, and your life does pass. But it turned out okay. So now what I'm hoping is that either some of these things or just general questions might have come up that I can jump into. If you have any questions, that would be great. We do want to, this is being recorded, so if you ask a question, use your large rehearsal conducting voice so that anyone can hear that. Does anyone have any questions that any of this brings forward? Yes.
Can you talk about, sorry, I'm just trying to use my large ensemble voice. Can you talk about what, throughout your career, and even now that you're not conducting as much as you were, what continued to feed you, either artistically or spiritually or in any way?
Well, I used to joke. People would say, what are your goals in life? You know, and I always said I would really love to be an itinerant guest conductor. Guess what? When you're retired as a musician, you can still do your thing. It's fantastic. Now, the only difference is I don't work with, on a daily basis, with some of the best players on the planet, but I still have an opportunity to go out and do things. And so I was mentioning to someone in here that I have former students who are in various things who now know that I'm free during the week. And so one of our grads is the new, doing a fantastic job, the new orchestra director at Baldwin Wallace University. His name is Suhan, he's on the board here. And I used to go and work with his Carmel High School Orchestra all the time. And now he's at Baldwin Wallace, but he had previously accepted a position just to do a week of music education, string music education in Thailand in September. And so he immediately asked, could you come in for me for a week? Guess how long it took for me to answer that question? Absolutely. So I was able to work with his orchestra and teach conducting and for 4 days, and he was doing Scheherazade, which is fun. First rehearsal, I said, okay, we'll not deal with the cadenzas today, that'll be next time, but here we go with the 2D passages, and it was wonderful. And that was just a fantastic experience. So that pulled me into my Scheherazade score again. So that did that, and teaching conducting. It's been a while since I taught undergraduate conducting, so that was exciting to remember how to do that. I think that the thing that keeps you going is the music, but I also think it's a great opportunity for us now. My wife and I go to musical things that also keep the percolation going. I think what's really important is that we don't subject ourselves to a very small musical world. We have season tickets to the Lyric Opera, which is only 3.5, 4 hours from our home in Bloomington. And so Siegfried, they're doing the Ring, and we've been to Das Rheingold and the Valkyrie and Siegfried this year. Next year is going to Run, and we're saving our money for the whole Ring cycle in 2020. Hoping for good weather for the roads and that kind of thing. Being able to go to various things. We'll be going to Ann Arbor for the Philharmonia concerts of England, for 2 of those. So keeping the music in our heads and our hearts so that we have something then to give when we're on the podium doing James White or whatever. Because we give what we are. And I think that we are what we ingest. And if we ingest great music, it becomes us and it can come back out. I've always felt that that's really important. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
To some extent. Yes.
Going off of that sort of ingesting, how do you select repertoire?
Well, selecting repertoire as an itinerant guest conductor is different than your regular job. So I'll do both. Itinerant guest conductors, first of all, have to know how good is the group that you're working with. And it's the same even before when you're asked to do an honor band. You ask, could I see a list of what's been done in the last 4 years? Then you find someone who is at the concerts and you say to them this: what was done successfully and what piece didn't work? Then you have sort of an idea of what you can select. And then, once you have that idea, then for me, I want to choose music that I think that will not just be appropriate for them, but which will be appropriate musically for them. So it has to be balanced. You know, it's very possible to do the same piece on your program by 3 different composers. So it has to be different. I want something that musically challenges, technically challenges, but there's a variety of those things throughout the repertoire. I want to know who the audience is, so I can give the audience something too. It's a very different thing between an all-state and working with an all-county kind of thing in terms of that. Sometimes you're programming a little bit for public school teachers because they want you to find some of the latest things so they can see how they sound. So that for the last many years, doing collegiate programming, it's about the same, but a very different kind of animal. I didn't have to worry about technique very much at all. But I still wanted to make sure there was a balance within that. I wanted to do new music, but I did not want to neglect the older classics. I had any number of students who were planning to audition for the service bands in DC. They always wanted me to do pieces that had the excerpts. So euphonium players want to make sure we had the Schoenberg theme and variations every year. Okay, can't do that. But there's enough of variety that we can do with the older pieces and the newer pieces so that there is a good mixture of that. This is dangerous for me to say, I did not want to be tied into doing a piece just because I read in the CBDNA report that everybody else was doing it. I wanted to choose it because I thought it was worthy. Now, if everybody else is doing it, I'm going to check it out. But I don't want to do it so that I can come to a convention and say, oh yes, I'm doing the music. That was not part of it for me. Just my own personal thing. So it's a little bit like planning a meal. Some people really program a lot of dessert. Some people program mostly light salad. Some people have a program that has more variety, depth, but also a variety of musical responses required. And I think that was always the goal. However, you also get involved with commissions where you take your chance. You hope for the best. When I took the job at IU, Mr. Kramer had a whole shelving thing. He said, I'm not going to move that. You can deal with it. Okay. It's in my office, and it was his office. So I opened it up, and there were commissions that we were involved with, which he never touched. Well, I thought, let's see why. They stayed right there. Some of those are recycled now. And some commissions were fantastic. I was so happy. I was president when the Big Ten band directors voted to double our dues for 2 years in order to pay for several commissions, including the William Bolcom. It was a hard letter to write to the other directors of bands. Remember our agreement? But boy, was it working. The Bolcom is supremely fantastic. So a lot of times commissions work out really well.
Yeah, so a lot of us are going to be getting our very first collegiate job within the next couple of years. Can you maybe talk about a couple ways we can be really successful as young as we are, just in that first job?
One of the things that surprised me when I moved from the high school ranks to the collegiate ranks was the different kind of teaching that was required. Now, it's going to be different wherever you are. But most of us, when we've taught in the middle school or the high school, we don't lecture much in terms of classroom activity. We don't stand in front of the room and teach. We rehearse. And that was all my thing. When I got my first college job, one of the things that I needed to do was suddenly to teach a class. Oh, I loved it. That particular one was a pre-student teaching class, which could be subtitled, Everything You Wanted to Know, You Needed to Know, and You Have Not Yet Learned, and Student Teaching is Coming at You Like a Freight Train Down the Railroad Tracks. And boy, they would come in and go. Because at that time, it was 6 weeks of me, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then student teaching. Now that's changed, and it's a different semester. But I had never taught a class like that. So the preparation for that, how to engage the students, how to prepare on a daily basis and stay up with all of that, that was really vital. And that at one time, because of a change in personnel, I actually taught a marching band techniques class. So forgive me, all those students, but I did my best with that. But that was a different kind of thing. I also was less prepared. I got prepared very quickly to realize that at the collegiate level, a lot of times people would just pop in. So you're conducting along, and there's suddenly 4 people up there looking at you. And in the high school and middle school, a lot of times your principal will come in and observe, but they probably have the generosity to let you know I'll be coming today, or at least you know who they are. A lot of times, we just have people come in. And so getting used to that was a little bit different. The way to talk to college students and engage them, play enough, because all they want to do is play. But to be able to speak to them quickly, engage quickly, and then go into the music. It's a little bit less of a feeling of when you're doing high school, sharing stories and that kind of thing. But they're here for a specific period of time. like I mentioned, the politics involved. You have to know that every collegial thing that you do, one of those people might be on the committee that will decide if you get tenure or not. And so maybe you have a bad day one day, and you're grousing about something, and then later on that person's on your committee. You don't want that to happen. So it's just a constant reminder that we're on call all the time. That the other thing to think about is that at the high school or middle school, we are mentors. There's no question about it. Even more so at the collegiate level, with people who are resolving at that point to be who they will be in their entire adult life. And the need to be inspirational, to be a role model of some kind or another, to engage with them, to make them excited about what they're doing. It's a wonderful thing, and it's also something just that we always have to keep in mind. I remember there was one time one of our graduate students, we had all the graduate students over during the marching season for Chile or something. And my son was very little, and one of the graduate students said, "Mr. Pratt, I've never seen you hold a child before. It just blows my mind." Yeah, I do this all the time. Because in their mind, I was this person. And so it's very interesting that we need to remember that we're always being observed in every way. So does that sort of answer? Yes?
It's a nice segue. I was going to ask, I wonder if you would share your thoughts about balancing the work of a collegiate band director with family life.
It's so important. I hope that my former students knew that family life came first for me. And they're not easy to do all the time. But I was at every track meet, most every high school and middle school band and orchestra concert as the kids were growing up. My son was in musicals every year. My wife, bless her heart, was in every dress rehearsal and every performance of West Side Story, My Fair Lady, the whole business. And I was at most every performance of those things. For me, I would turn down gigs, even before I was tenured, if there was something important for family. My wife still reminds me of the time Nathan, our son, he quite often is late in life, actually. And he was late making an appearance. Due date was such time, and I had a job interview someplace in the Midwest as a director of band's position. And they wanted me to come on his due date. I said, "Oh, I really can't do that kind of." He said, "Okay, we'll make you come in last." Well, it was 2 weeks after the due date that he finally came. And I was there for the birth and delivery. But then I left for 2 days. Now, I think my mother-in-law was there, but my wife still reminds me of the time that I abandoned her with a newborn baby. But it was important. I couldn't go and do that job interview until he was born. But family life is important. Faith, family, so much more important. And yet, also secrets, I think, to stability, secrets to grounding, secrets to feeling like, well, this thing at work is bad, but I still have my family, still have my faith. So it's one of those things where it helps balance. I've seen too many people lose because they put work first. I don't think that family should ever be an excuse for not doing your job. It means you have to work ahead sometimes. And a lot of times you involve the family in what you're doing. So to me, that's an aspirational goal that's important. And in the long run, it's worth it. I still remember my kids' things and how proud I was of them and still am. Yeah, Nathan was not Henry Higgins, but the professor who was the sidekick of you. Did a great British accent. I'll treasure that memory forever. And those things are vital. Thanks for that question. Any other? Just roll.
So, being the itinerant rock band director, how do you get to have a relationship with those students in such a short amount of time?
It's really hard, and especially on the size of ensembles. How many people are in the Iowa All-State Band?
800, no.
About 300. It's huge. And even in the smaller All-State bands, 100 or whatever. And I just love it. The guests are so helpful. They take the kids' names and put them on the music stands, right? Then the kids come in, half of them fall off. The other half, you can't read them because they're behind tall people. So you can read the flutes. Rachel, how are you doing? But it doesn't help very much. So to reach out and connect, first of all, eye contact is vital. Because you don't need to know a person's name to look at them. And then you take the, and this is for every person. You take your percentages of eye contact. Okay, so people who are right here don't need a lot of eye contact because they're in physical proximity. The conductor is able to get the front row to feel. It's the back row that needs the eye contact more. So make a percentage. 50% of the eye contact is back there, particularly if people are mobile. Not because of personalities, because they're moving around. And the back row often has our low brass folks. And we want to reach out to them because they're the foundation of all that we do. So our percentage of eye contact, then how we speak to them. We can speak sort of in group language, or we can speak in more individual language. And I think the more individual language we can get, the better. You people, not good words to use. Trumpets, trombones, horns, at least get that into it as quickly as possible. The other thing is not what we say as much as how we say it. All right, number 23, here we go. This is Mozart, he's fun. Perhaps taking away some of our veneer and showing something, I don't know, as wild and crazy as I like music too. Because some of us have this, I'm on this box, you're down there, stay there. Don't mess with me. That kind of thing. That closes off right away, doesn't it? So if we can somehow show 2 or 3 qualities within how we talk. One is, I like music too, and I like you. And I like the fact that we can share this music with the audience. And that's why we're doing this. And so in using that kind of language, I think it brings us together. It was so neat. A few years ago, I had this big tall guy come up to me at a state convention saying, "Hi, Mr. Pratt, you remember me?" I said, "I was in the junior all-state band in my 8th grade year when you were," of course he was this tall back then. But for him, he saw me in the hall and he had to stop me and ask if I remembered. I said, "You're much taller now." Yeah, that's great. But it shows that they're there to communicate. And so if we can reach out to them then we can make that kind of content, which is, I think, fun. But it is difficult. And so sometimes people are really good at getting to know a few of the students, but it's so hard to get to know everybody. So I try to be as open as I can to the everybody, rather than just get to know really well a few and hope that it carries through. And so I try to do the larger thing. Does that? Yes.
I know you mentioned earlier attending concerts and activities at the different arts around campus. What other habits or decisions do you see that graduate students make in their time on campus that you would say, yes, more of that, keep doing those things?
Yeah, it's tough because your degree requirements actually are fairly extensive. So you have to do those first, and that's great. But there are all kinds of things still to this day that on our campus that I wish I had done. And I will someday. I go to campus nearly every day to do the exercise bike and all that stuff. And generally, I walk past what's called the Lilly Library. And it's a repository of things like an original copy of the Gutenberg Bible and the original works of, blah, blah, blah. It's a tremendous library. And every time I walk past there, I think, I should go in there someday. To do that. And our Fine Arts Museum, same thing. But I think to take advantage of as much as possible that's outside of what we do. So we're mostly instrumental folks. So to go to a great singing recital, especially when it's someone who really knows how to shape. One of the most fantastic experiences of my life was taking lessons on my instrument with a person who was constantly pointing me to musical values, not instrumental values. And so you're a conductor, huh? Okay. Can you get over the idea that a bar line is that important? Oh, I never thought of it that way, because that's where one is. Oh yeah. And so how about doing a phrase this way, and next time doing it a little bit different? So, oh yeah. So in so much in my rehearsal is a carryover from private lessons, and how to make music as an individual person goes right into making music with an ensemble. A lot of times we put down, the big things: tone, intonation, technique, rhythm, and interpretation. Interpretation is just one of the 5 important things. I think that's great. But who we are as musicians is determined by what we do with interpretation after we've solved all those other issues. And so the first thing I listen to if someone's doing a piece is, how is it stylistically? Because I've had the great opportunity to hear Kathleen Battle sing on stage when I was 12 feet from her. She knew how to phrase. Tremendous, but also great vitality and vivaciousness in the style of the Mozart aria that she was doing. When I was an undergrad student, Luciano Pavarotti came before he was famous. Does anyone know who Pavarotti is to this day? He's one of the 3 tenors, right? This way. And he could sing. But here I was as a sophomore. I got one of those tickets that you had to sit way up front. It was horrible. No, it wasn't. It was Pavarotti. And I could see it from the side. He had his handkerchief, and all this. And I heard this voice coming off of the stage, bouncing off the back of the auditorium, coming back here. I heard it twice. It was great. And his musicianship and how he shaped things, and even as an undergrad, I could begin to hear how he wasn't just a singer, he was an artist. That's what our aspiration is to be an artistic conductor. And how do you become artistic? Your musicianship comes out of you no matter what you do, no matter how you try to stop it down. The musicianship comes out, and that's our goal. So to do as much, one of the things that we did when we first moved to Bloomington is season tickets to the Indianapolis Symphony, because it was only 15. It was a date night, but it was also a great chance to hear great soloists with a great orchestra. And There are any number of times when I would leave rehearsal, get in the car, and we'd go up to Indianapolis. I would rehearse differently the next day. Raymond Leppard was the music director for any number of years, great musicologist and scholar and conductor. Learned so much from him just watching him, but hearing. And so just doing as many things as you can, I think, adds to your repertoire of musical gestures that your heart understands. And your brain now can put a name to it because you've had music theory and all of that business. Anything else? Well, one of the things that I would just like to leave you with is that when I first came into the Big Ten, I was just out in my 20s and almost felt like I belonged. Almost. Came to my first Big Ten meeting like you did, and you did this morning, and there's John Painter. I hope you remember who John Painter is. And there's H. Robert Reynolds. I think William Ravelli was there. I wish my memory would remember for sure. Don McGinnis from Ohio State was there. Half of the Ohio State marching band people were there, Drosty, etc. I could go on with every institution. I felt like I was walking into a museum of great conductors. And the fact that they made me welcome and as comfortable as I possibly could feel when talking to people who were statues and monuments in my mind, it was really great. And I was aware that all of those famous people were there because of their work ethic, because of their musicianship, because of the intensity of what they brought to them. But I also knew when they got together, they talked about their families. And they talked about the boat on a lake in Michigan, and they talked about all kinds of those things. Oh, really? So what an honor it has been to be part of this Big Ten thing that you're part of. And even more than that, part of music making as conductors, that we can stand on a box and do stuff with gestures that makes music, that makes people want to applaud, and they pay us. Wow. Hello, Major Medical. And if you're lucky, dental. So congratulations on choosing what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.